It may not have been one of the most important scenes of the episode of My Hero Academia, but my girl Ochiko realizing that she's in love with Izuku is absolutely adorable, and I want more of that, because as you know, I'm a big fan of romance, and I've always been an Izuku-Ochiko shipper, and as I said, that doesn't happen, but just seeing that scene finally animated, it warmed my heart up for today. Okay, coming into this episode, I feel like many anime-onlys are going to be extremely excited, but also overwhelmed. And why I say overwhelmed is because of everything that happened within the episode. A lot of information that was given to anime-onlys. Now, I remember when I was reading the manga for the first time for this segment, I remember kind of having to reread the chapters quite a few times to kind of grasp everything of what is going on, to understand the rules of the license exam, to all these new characters getting introduced, or quirkiness and all of that. It took a bit. I had to reread the chapters multiple times to kind of understand everything going on, and I have to admit, coming into this episode, it could be a little bit overwhelming. And I can see why many might have an issue like that while watching this episode, because there's a lot of characters that were introduced within this episode that might make everybody be like, oh crap, I don't remember the name, I don't know who this is, I'm probably going to forget their name when next week, arrives. That's bound to happen. But the big point here is that do not worry. When it comes to a lot of characters that Horikoshi introduces, typically he does give the spotlight to them, and he does give them characterization. That's one of the big reasons why I love My Hero Academia so much, is because even though we have kind of a big cast, Horikoshi is willing to go out of his way and dive into individual characters that are not Izuku or All Might. He dives into other characters and gives them the spotlight to let us see how they are, how they operate as a hero, or how they operate outside of heroism and all that. So, do not worry. It's one of the big reasons why I love My Hero Academia so much. And even though it's overwhelming, you don't really, you probably don't know what's all going on. You're trying to get a grasp on all the characters' designs and names and stuff. Eventually, you will kind of pick up on some of these things, because Horikoshi's a great writer, and when he does, start focusing on the characters, he really makes sure you're going to remember their names. Do not worry about that. The license exam. It has finally begun. Something that has been hinted at and built up since Season 2, so towards the second half of Season 2, and I'm glad to finally see this arc anime, because this is the beginning of a very, very long arc. What I mean by long arc is that what we're getting here, the content within this episode, this beginning of this arc does not conclude actually until Season 4. And if you are a manga reader, you know what I'm talking about, because of all of this information that we gather from this. I'm pretty excited to finally get to see this animated. A lot of characters that got introduced in this episode, like Inasa and all that, and, seeing how he was animated for this episode, I was pleasantly surprised. I could see that the animators put a lot of life in his character, because in the manga panels when he was introduced, there was a lot of life to him. He was very enthusiastic, and he was constantly moving, and you saw blood kind of come down his face because he just, bowed real low, basically saying, I'm sorry and all of that, just the way Inasa was as a character, he was very unique and different, and he definitely stood out amongst all the other characters that were introduced. And I feel like the introduction of Inasa for the anime, I think they did a fantastic job. Probably a lot better, in my opinion, than the manga. Now, other characters were introduced as well. Some characters, like the one that's very shady and was looking at Bakugo and all that. And Bakugo was like, don't be giving me that type of, those words when your face says the exact opposite. Basically, what Bakugo was saying for that moment of that character introduction is like, it's very obvious that you're heinous and you're someone that, can put on a mask. And so, Bakugo realized the man was just putting up airs, seeming nice, but in reality, he wasn't really a nice guy whatsoever. Then we had a bunch of other characters that were introduced as well, for instance, like Joke, which I love Joke's introduction. Oh my god, to me, that was one of the highlights of the episode, besides the super serious stuff that happens towards the end. But Joke's character introduction, I know many are going to fall in love with her. I know many will, because I remember when this came out in the manga and we saw Joke for the first time, I remember many, just saying, like, I love her, I ship her and Aizawa so much. I remember seeing that continuously throughout the chapters after she was, revealed. And I have to say, hearing her voice actor and how she was reacting with Aizawa was freaking hilarious. Like, the way Aizawa's eye twitched, like, oh my god, I love that little detail when he knew that joke was popping up, and you saw his eye twitch and all that, and he realized what was about to happen. I'm like, yo, like, I knew what was coming, okay, as a manga reader, and just see the way that was, I was like, yo, they're going in, like, they're really animating this man. It's like, you know, he really, really gets triggered around joke. And he got, like, you know, scared. He didn't really want to talk to her. He's kind of brushing her off. I mean, she was trying to get him to laugh and all that, which I find freaking hilarious, because when you look at the description of her quirk, she can make people laugh around her and all that. She gives them happy vibes, which leads to interesting fights with her and a villain. And someone like Aizawa that's always serious, someone that never smiles or laughs, it's pretty entertaining when you see someone like joking around with him and trying to just say these random things to get him all up and happy, which I find hilarious, like I've already said. So Joke, oh my god, love her character introduction. I don't think many are really gonna have much of a problem remembering her, just because of how her character was, and, you know, everybody I think loves Aizawa. He's a great character, he has a great character design and all that, he's a great mentor, and so I feel like everybody is gonna fall in love with Joke's relationship with Aizawa, and they're gonna be like, yep, I ship those two, they need to be together. So maybe it might happen one day, who knows. I mean, yeah, it's pretty much the major character introductions we got for this episode. There's quite a few that were in the background that have yet to get introduced, so I'm not going to really get into them at the moment, but I really love the way the character introductions were done, and I especially love the theme of this arc. It was actually, when this arc started, it made me really fall in love with My Hero Academia. I mean, I was already in love with it with the whole stuff with All Might versus All for One. It was a fantastic arc, but when we got into this arc, it seemed like Horikoshi started to put a lot of, I guess, info dumps. Like, he tried to dive in and expand upon, like, the information he gives to his readers. For instance, this entire training segment, or this license exam that they're getting into, on paper, it seems simple, but it really isn't, especially with what they need to do. For instance, they're all given 6 different balls, they have 3 targeters on their body, they can place it anywhere they want on the body, but they cannot put it, like, near their armpits or on the bottom of their soles, somewhere you can't basically access. It has to be kind of out in the open before they can see it, kind of similar to the bandana, you know, in Season 2. And you have it to where they have to eliminate an opponent. They have to eliminate multiple opponents to be able to pass. And only 1% out of, like, 1,500 people are going to be able to pass, which means that the fail rate and pass rate is incredibly insane. For instance, 99% of everyone there is going to fail, while 1% is going to move on to the next part of the exam, which is just absolutely ridiculous. And it makes you, like, start to wonder, as an anime only, I remember when I was a manga reader, I was looking at this, is some of our characters, are they going to make it? Are they going to fail? Are they not going to be able to get their exam? I remember thinking that when I saw this in the manga, and I know many, while watching this episode, is going to be thinking that, like, okay, so 1% pass rate, it's very obvious that some of our characters are not going to make it, especially with the challenge that has been set in front of them with this arc. Now, let's get right into that. So, the whole situation with what's been set against them, but also to the whole, you know, exam of what they need to do for the rules, they have to eliminate multiple opponents, and they only have 6 balls. If they get accurate shots, they'll be able to get the opponent they need. But the thing is, though, is that they need to actually probably still the takedowns. For instance, when someone has 2 shots on their body, and there's 1 shot left, that's when you should go for the takedown. For instance, you should be, you know, kind of stingy. Wait until your opponent is whittled down and then attack them. That's pretty much what the rules of the game is that instead of just trying to, you know, use all 3 balls on one person, like out of your 6, just, you know, waste 1 ball on one person, come in and still the grab, like the takedown. That's what it is. For instance, you can get 6 people like it's nothing if you just wait for the last time to, you know, target someone. So basically, the game makes it to where you have to be a thief. You have to steal takedowns. And it really makes you start scratching your head like, is that something that should fit what a hero would do? For instance, go in and kind of steal credit, or go in and do that sneak attack or takedown, is that something what a hero would do? And it just starts making you wonder, like, about the system and all that. Is there, like, other meaning to this, and also how flawed it potentially could be, and how this isn't really a good representation of what the hero system probably is. Which, speaking of the hero system, we get Stain mentioned in this episode. Now, I have mentioned Stain many times throughout my reviews of My Hero Academia throughout Season 2, Season 3, the manga, even to the latest chapters. I mention Stain every so often. Stain is a relatively important character. Even if he is never back in the series, for instance, he never gets out of jail, that does not matter, because Stain is someone that will always have a presence in the story of My Hero Academia. And the reason why is because of his ideology, what he did. For instance, he exposed the Hero Society. He kind of started to crack the pillars of the Hero Society. And also he caused it where a bunch of villains wanted to join the League of Villains because they were inspired by Stain's ideology. So, Stain has major weight in the story. Regardless if he ever pops up and, starts fighting again or whatever, it does not matter. His presence will always be there. And we get to see the everlasting effects of what Stain did being very, relevant in this episode. For instance, you have it to where the person giving out the exam and telling the rules is like, because of the situation with Stain and how the public views heroes and all of that, and, how people, think heroes shouldn't go after compensation, like money, or gain wealth, or whatever, that's the thing that everybody's starting to think about. Like, heroes should not be doing that. For instance, they shouldn't be getting anything out of being a hero. And the dude's like, look, I understand where they're coming from. You cannot expect someone to risk their life and do this job without getting something from it, like money or pay. At the end of the day, it's like saying what the police officers do. Even though the police officers' role in the world is to protect people and, make sure they keep the peace, they still get paid for their job. It's kind of like saying they're not worthy of pay because they're just protecting the public. And so that's kind of what's going on here, basically showing that Stain's ideology has shifted some people's perspective on Hero Society. The public doesn't really think that heroes might get paid or should get paid properly because they should just be happy to be able to save people. And that's why he mentioned that. He's like, personally, I don't care. I don't care exactly, how you want to be a hero, why you want to be a hero. For instance, if you want to be a hero to get money, fame, whatever it may be, the point is you need to be able to do your job. That's kind of what he's saying. I just want you to be able to do your job as a hero, and that's the whole point of the exam. And so the exam, it's a little bit harder thanks to the influence of Stain. And that is why this, the 1% can only pass instead of just 50%. So yeah, that's the kind of the revelation for this episode, is that Stain kind of has affected the license exams. Now, getting into the challenge before UA, our main cast of characters, every other school is going to target them. Now, for the most part, this is normally a cliche. This is something you would see in a shonen. For instance, a bunch of other new characters that were introduced ganging up on our main cast of characters. It's something you have seen time and time again. It happens all the time in shonen, and I have to admit that is a cliche. But at the same time, though, the information that Horikoshi-sensei gave to this segment makes it believable, and you're like, you know what, this fits in with the theme of the series and doesn't go against anything, and so it's a really good cliche. That, the execution of this cliche was spot on. Let's get into that. The cliche I'm talking about is, like I said, all of our characters banding together to work against the opponents. It's kind of similar like the Tournament of Power in, the recent arc of Dragon Ball Super. And with our characters teaming up together and having a couple that, want to be on their own, do their own thing, for instance, Bakugo and Todoroki, that's going to lead to issues. And basically, the reason why all of them are going up against him, first of all the schools are targeting them, is because they have the most information about UA. Which, that is very critical for this engagement that they're getting into. Aizawa lets us know that right now, what they're dealing with, for instance, having all the other schools come after them, is what they're going to have to be dealing with when they're heroes. And what that means is that when they officially become pro-heroes, people are going to know what their quirk is. It's kind of like this. Okay, example. Aizawa. he is someone that has an eraser quirk. He can, cancel someone's quirk out to where they can't use it as long as he has his eyes open. It's common knowledge. People know about it. Think about someone like Izuku. Izuku, he writes down all the knowledge on heroes and people he sees continuously, and he has notebooks of this stuff. So he is very aware of what heroes are capable of. And that basically lets us know that these heroes, when they get into a fight with a villain, they don't know what a villain is capable of, but the villain most likely knows what they're capable of. Example, All For One, okay? All For One, he's a mysterious villain, and he kind of was when he did pop up. Nobody really knew what he was capable of, and, he just pops up out of nowhere. Aizawa's up against him and all of that, and, Aizawa, he has no idea what All For One is capable of, but All For One knows what Aizawa is capable of, his weaknesses, and how he can get to him, and that is the situation heroes are always going to be in. They're always at a disadvantage in every single encounter with a villain, because number one, the villain has more information on them. Since heroes are public figures, people know about them, it's going to mean that information's spread all over the place. If a villain is actually a smart and intelligent villain, all they need to do is look up this, hero, and they're going to be able to know what's going down or how to defeat the person. For instance, when you think about Izuku, all you gotta do is look up Izuku's track record, and this man breaks his body like paper mache continuously. You look into that, you're like, obviously, if I force this man to go in, he's not going to be able to do much. He's just going to fall to the ground, and he's going to be an easy target. So, yeah, that's the major point of what Aizawa was talking about, is like, he's getting them ready. He's getting them ready for the fact that when they do become pros, they're not going to have, an advantage. They're not going to have an even fight. That's not even factoring in rescues and keeping the damage of the city or wherever they're at to a minimum. Remember, that's been very important for a very long time. That was established in Season 1, Season 2, and now Season 3, that when heroes are operating, they're doing work, they need to be able to fight and try to minimize as much damage as possible. For instance, broken buildings. They don't want to go out just using all their force breaking buildings down. They need to make sure that they maintain as little amount of damage as possible while fighting a villain that honestly doesn't give a crap about damage to wherever they're at. So, like I said, heroes, they're always at a disadvantage, and that is what Aizawa is prepping for them. Like, he's like, look, they need to get used to this, they need to be ready for this, they need to understand that they're going to always be in a bad situation, so if they can't overcome this challenge that is set before them, then they're not going to be heroes in the first place. So that's pretty much what Aizawa is letting us know. Is that right now, these characters, our main cast of characters, if they cannot win up against all these schools coming after them, then there's nothing they can do when they do officially become pros. Because villains are going to do the exact same thing. Nothing is ever going to be fair. All Might, I've talked about this briefly already, but I can dive into it a little bit more now because of this episode. As we know, All Might, he doesn't have a quirk anymore, okay? He's quirkless. He's powerless. All he can do is flex. That's all he can do. Just buff up a little bit and flex. That's all it is. He no longer has One For All within his body. So he's pretty much a regular civilian. He can't do anything. And Bakugo, breaking the terrain and it was falling down towards All Might, that could have injured All Might. Because All Might, he is not in the state anymore to where he can protect himself. He can't do that. And it was a very sad scene when All Might had his inner monologue, and he was like, I guess I've become one of those that need protecting, huh? And it just makes you realize that someone that's been this icon, this symbol of peace, someone that has always appeared to be very strong, no longer can even protect themselves, which opens your eyes up to how fragile All Might is right now. All it would take is one villain that holds and harbors a grudge against All Might to pop up and end his life. There's nothing All Might really could do. Example, let's say Muscular somehow wasn't in jail, he could come out and just beat the crap out of All Might like it's nothing, because, All Might can't defend himself. So, All Might right now, he's in a very fragile situation. You gotta imagine how much that must, bring him down, because he's always been able to be someone that can, protect himself, but protect others as well, but now being someone that needs protected, that's going to be a huge wake-up call. It kind of messed with his mental state a little bit, so it definitely is going to lead into some interesting characterization, and I think many are going to probably respect that scene with how All Might felt about that, and it also makes me respect Horikoshi as a writer, giving us a scene like that with All Might. Now let's talk about Izuku's new fighting style. So Izuku, as we already saw at the end of the last episode, he is now using his legs. Now, to get right into that, Izuku using his legs, it might not seem that impressive. I saw quite a few people saying in the comments last week that, like, oh, what, he's just changing the legs? That's okay, it's not that cool at all. Some even said it's kind of stupid and all that, they're disappointed. But let me kind of explain the reason of why this is so good for Izuku to use his legs. Number one, which is the obvious thing, is that he's not straining his arms anymore, because his arms are so messed up, his ligaments are so messed up, he can't use his arms. No amount of healing through his body is going to fix his arms. The only way he could potentially ever fix his arms is if someone has a quirk that legit could heal his body while his body trying to heal something. So, right now, Izuku, he's done. GG with his arms. He cannot stress his arms anymore. So that's the obvious part of this. Number two, the reason why this is good for him is because normally when it comes to the human body, legs are much stronger. Okay, it's common knowledge, honestly. It's not even a spoiler. It's pretty common knowledge when you think about it. I mean, look, okay, when you get up and you start walking, let's say, down the road, or you walk downstairs, or you walk upstairs, or you walk to schoolwork, whatever, get in your car, you gotta imagine, okay? You're putting a lot of pressure and force on your legs to continue walking. But your arms, even though you use them a lot and you pick up a lot of things, they're not always having to support everything. They're not supporting all of you at once continuously when you're walking on your 2 feet. So your legs are way stronger than your arms. And so they can handle a hell of a lot more and output a hell of a lot more. So Izuku changing over to his legs is extremely important for his growth. And also the change in his fighting style as well. Because it was stated that he will become more like a speed type, which I think is really cool. Because, you see, when you think of All Might, he's all about power, brute force, going in, you know, breaking them apart and all that, just destroying them with, you know, his plus ultra attacks, you know, United States of Smash. And so, he's always been about power, and Izuku has shown that he's a little bit of a brute as well. He goes in all about power, but he's trying to shift away from that and become more of a speedster than anything else. For instance, him adapting to leg work, fighting with his legs, will allow him to be able to maneuver around the terrain like nothing, and allow him to constantly outmaneuver his opponent, because, full cow, that he uses, you know, even though he buffs his body and all that, it will also give him a movement speed jump that will allow him to just, you know, pull off actions a lot better, especially if he gets used to his legs. So, I mean, I really love the idea that Izuku is learning, like, how to use his legs to fight, and this also shows an element to Izuku's characterization that he's done time and time again. He's always incorporated everybody else's techniques for himself. For instance, Bakugo, to Gran Torino, to All Might. Now, Ida, he's always incorporated their techniques into his style to improve, and he's constantly just taking techniques from people, trying to learn from them to allow himself to grow as a hero. So that's always it's a little nice little trait that Izuku does all the time, and once again, we get to see that throughout this episode. I think that's pretty much about it, though. I mean, I think I went over all the major important details of the episode. If I missed anything, let me know in the comments below. But with that, I love you guys. You have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. Please be safe, stay healthy. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. If you like this video, please leave a like. And if you want to get notified for whenever I upload a video, please click the bell icon down below. And with that, Chibi out.